Okay, so let's do a quick run through of an analysis. I just click on patients and I can choose a patient and it pulls up their profile of the latest activities. So you can just click on one of them, whatever the case may be, whichever one that you actually want to evaluate. So I pulled one up here and verify that it is a walk. It is the date and time that I'm actually looking at. Across the top, you'll notice here the basic values of this dashboard. Keep in mind that the coloration in some of these metrics actually matters. So green means that it's within the normative values of that particular demographic, right? So age, gender, for example. Red means it's outside of that, and amber, that yellow color, means that it is sort of on the outskirts of that normative data. The reason for this is I can look at things really, really quick and decide, okay, I need to spend more time evaluating something, or I move on to the next one. So the symmetry is going to be the percent of symmetry, in other words, right and left with regards to contact time, how much time the person spends in time with the ground. The cadence is going to be directly related to their speed, but obviously the leg length and how their stride lengths are going to be output depending on how long of a step that they're actually going to be taking. So this particular person, I actually had him walking on a treadmill at just less than 2 miles an hour. So it shows up as red. So that's a good indication that it's basically too slow. So there are some standard values with regards to how fast somebody should be walking, and to make sure that we indicate that. Now, if I do see something offset in that, I tend to do this anyway, but look at the walking profile. Just do a quick glance at the stride lengths. The stance phase and the swing phase should be somewhere in the 65% to 35% to the 40% in that swing phase. If I do notice something that is off, then I'm going to go ahead and click on the advanced, and then the advanced allows me to get a little bit more detail. Same thing, the coloration. What's interesting is it tells me that it's off, but it actually tells me if it's too high or too long, or too low or too short, right? So that's what these stride duration means: length, stance time, and the swing time. So it helps you to identify where the problem actually is. The gait line is the center of pressure as we're going through the contact phase from heel strike eventually to toe off. And then it actually shows us that transition into that toe off position, which this is pretty typical, and is a really good center of pressure representation, and how it also transfers over to that first and second ray to the toe. Propulsion rate is a ratio between the hip flexors and the plantar flexors in terms of late propulsion phase into early swing phase. Okay, so that gives us an indication as to the combination of those two and whether or not they're working appropriately. So what you'll see is it's showing us here that it's green and green, and that 5% difference is a normal value. But over here on the right, it shows that there's an absence of color here. So that means that it's not really recruiting. And then in the red, it's actually going to say that that's on the upscale or the downscale. And this is going to be indicated by the arrow, okay? So I go back up to the top, so that's the general view, and I'm going to look at the details view. So the details view gives me some information with regards to the pronosupination angles. So that's looking at the foot position as it comes in contact with the ground until it leaves the ground. So same thing, green, amber, everything actually looks pretty good. Click on the advanced, and now it actually gives me what's referred to as the corridor. The green corridor are the normative values in our system with regards to this pronation and supination, which is looking at the foot as a block model inside of the shoe. The thick black line is the mean, right, the average, and you can put your cursor over the dot and it shows you the actual value. These lighter thin lines actually show you the standard deviations. A negative angle is going to be representing a heel inversion. So in other words, when they heel strike, they're landing slightly on the outside of the foot, and then as you can see, they move into a little bit more neutral, right? So they're reducing the heel inversion. So almost like going closer to a pronation or neutral position, and that's how the corridor actually continues as we go through. So this is again representative of the foot as a whole model. Now I've got the foot progression angle, so FPA. So that's the angle of the foot when it comes in contact with the ground, or the amount of external rotation that occurs after the end of the swing phase. So this is actually normal values. And then we see the circumduction. How far does the leg swing out from that trajectory of that sagittal plane? So we're at 1.4 and 0.8 inches, which is actually within relatively normal values. We look over here at steppage and clearance, and the steppage and clearance is going to be, well, how are they clearing that ground space, right? So we have more than sufficient height, especially here on the right. We like to see at least about 1/2 inch. And then we look at, this is going to be the toe off position. And this is the position relative to the surface of the ground that they're walking on and the surface of the foot. And then we can see this is going to be the strike angle position when their foot comes in contact with the ground. Again, it provides you some output and leads you down a certain path to evaluate or further evaluate some of these other conditions. You can put some comments in here, and you can also export this information.